interesting, isn't it, always, that the top of the Cotswolds is so flat, Michael, because we're at the top now, 1,083 feet, 330 metres.
This area we're on is actually Cleeve Common, which is often called Gloucestershire's largest field, actually, and at 410 hectares, or somewhat over 1,000 acres, it's a pretty big space.
The first time I saw Cleeve Common was from a helicopter when I was working for Radio 5 Live at the Cheltenham Festival. The Cheltenham Racecourse is just down below. I couldn't believe how flat it was at the top, but not the whole of this common is flat like a cricket pitch, because we've got deep valleys with scree slopes, and of course right on the western edge you've got the limestone escarpment, which is the Cotswold escarpment. And what a view. You can see out to the west the Malvern Hills, you can see Sugarloaf Mountain over at Abergavenny, and on a really clear day you can see the top of Exmoor over in Somerset. And Michael Bates is with us. He's the man that runs Cleeve Common Trust. It is, Michael, just breathtaking, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it's what brings so many visitors here, really. I mean, it's surprisingly quiet, but then it is a rather damp July morning, but, you know, we probably have 100,000 visitors coming up here.
Anybody listening to us who's seen coverage of Cheltenham Festival on the telly will almost know exactly where we're standing, because we're standing underneath some big masts on the top of Cleeve Common here, and it's this that forms the almost amphitheatre bowl to Cheltenham Festival, which makes it look so picturesque when we see it on the telly. Tell you what, why don't you start by telling us, I've called it Cleeve Common, but what is a common?
A lot of people think that common land actually belongs to the public, and in fact that's not true. That's not what common land is anywhere in the country. So it's privately owned land, this whole 1,000 acres of it. But what makes it a common is that certain people and their local farmers have commoners' rights. In this case, it's the right to put livestock up here. As far as the public's concerned, the public has right of access, and they can come and walk here any time of the day or any day of the year.
And it must have been such a precious place to people just recently, not just physically, but mentally as well.
Very much so, yes, and I know a lot of people who've commented on coming up here for their walk, for their run, whatever it might be, and just enjoying this sense of space and freedom around them. It just lifts the spirits, and it just shows how important it is to have these wide open spaces available for the good of people as well as for the good of nature.
Like you could be a ranger.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
You must be Kay Berryman. What a great job you've got.
I am very lucky. It's a wonderful office to have.
What does the job actually entail?
The phone can start going at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. Sheep related in the summer. Somebody lost on the hill in low cloud. Yeah, it's never a dull moment up here.
So you're sometimes corralling animals and sometimes people?
Absolutely. Mostly people, actually. During the lockdown, it was lots of people up here.
And you've got 1,500 sheep up here. That's a lot of sheep to look after.
Yes, it is. Yeah, they belong to local farmers that have grazing rights. And obviously we have our cattle up here.
Yes, the Belted Galloways, the black and white cattle. And they're up here, put up here by the Trust to help with the conservation.
Yes, they are. Yes.
And you look after those sometimes as well?
Yes, we do. Whether it's breaking ice on the water tanks in the winter, driving up on the tractor with a big round bale for them if they're hungry, if the ground is covered in snow.
Spending all year up here, you must really know your way around.
I think there's hidden gems everywhere, all over the hill, that I come across and think, oh gosh, I haven't been down here, or I haven't looked at this properly. Down in what we call Watery Bottom, there's a lovely area that's full of wild daffodils.
Watery Bottom is a good name. Give us some of the other names.
We've got Dry Bottom, we've got the Three Sisters, or the Two Sisters, the Lone Tree, Warden's Wood.
And you're never short of a good place for lunch?
No, no, you can definitely pick your spots. The Lone Tree is probably one of my favourite spots for having lunch. You can see quite a bit of the hill from there, so you feel that you're checking everybody's okay and surveying.
Michael Bates, the Executive Officer of the Cleeve Common Trust, to give you your full title, Michael.
Thank you.
Kay's been telling us about the common now, but what about the history? How long has there been a common here?
Well, actually a common since sort of medieval times, but really the history we need to go back, well, 6,000 years really, when Britain was being settled by Neolithic people. It wouldn't have been open grassland in those days. It would have been a sort of a scrubby hilltop with a lot of gorse, hawthorn, that sort of thing. And so nature has provided the raw materials, but it's mankind who sort of shaped it and made it what it is today.
Also up here, you can see lots of paths crisscrossing the whole of the common. Now, presumably some of these are modern paths, but a lot of them are ancient ones.
Certainly there are old droving roads that cross here. And some of these tracks could go right back to Iron Age or even Bronze Age times.
And Michael, when we're walking along the paths, you can actually see the limestone peeping through the soil. That's made this place valuable in the past for quarrying, hasn't it?
Very much so, and it's another force that shaped the landscape, particularly on this steep escarpment and some of the steep slopes of the valleys over there. There are certainly signs that quarrying was taking place in Roman times, because a couple of Roman coins were found in the bottom of one of the quarries many years ago, and it continued on and off really right up into the early 20th century. But the names of the quarries give light to the fact that not all of it was such good quality. I mean, there's a quarry called Roadstone Quarry.
And of course, when we look down at Cheltenham Racecourse and we see the modern racecourse that it is today with the new stand, it's amazing to think that this is where the racing began, on the top of here, because this is where the racecourse was originally, on the common.
Well, that's right, and it really reflected what's been the biggest change in the common's history since sort of prehistoric times, because come the 19th century, Cheltenham was booming as a fashionable spa resort, and racing actually started here in 1818 and on and off took place until 1855. And it's incredible to think that in its heyday, thousands of people would have tramped up from Cheltenham and surrounding villages for the racing up here. Quite a spectacle. But that was really only the start of it, because then this became more and more popular as a recreational area serving Cheltenham. The first golf course opened in 1891, and obviously there is still golf played up here today.
And Michael, when you mention all the different things happening up here, you know, golf, agriculture, recreation, has it been difficult to balance all of that?
Well, I think the answer is yes, and it has been for 150 years, really, ever since Cheltenham expanded. Originally, it was a balance between agriculture, all this hugely important grazing for all of these animals, and people coming up here for recreational purposes. Today, it's not so important up here as an agricultural resource, but for its conservation value, our aim is to keep this balance and so preserve this beautiful space for all sorts of uses for future generations to enjoy.
We've left Michael behind at the masts, some of the modern features here on Cleeve Common. But the interesting thing about this place really is that so much of its history, modern and ancient, is etched into the landscape, and we've dropped down now into a deep grassy ditch, and this is an Iron Age site on the edge of the escarpment, and Dr. Tim Copeland is an archaeologist who can tell us a little bit more about it. Tim, what are we looking at here?
Well, you're looking at ditches and banks. When we use the word hill fort, that indicates something military. We don't know it's military because you've only got three sides which are defended, if you want to use that word. The other one isn't. So I think this is a sort of place that's not used for defence. It's used for meetings of local people who come up here for a fair, a celebration, a festival, a couple of times a year, maybe connected with sun, moon, and it's where they find their wives. It's where they have a market and they trade sheep or whatever.
So it's more ceremonial, a meeting place.
It's another way of showing your status as well. I mean, if you can do this, then the people who lived around are saying, here's a sign that we are quite sophisticated. Look what we've done.
And how old is it?
We think it's either early or middle Iron Age. So we're talking about somewhere from 800 BC to maybe 200 BC.
You've got several other bits of archaeology as well, haven't you?
We have three types. We have the archaeology you would recognise, humps and bumps. Then we have quarry archaeology, which the escarpment has been quarried away, so you've got huge quarries there, and we have quarries all across the common. And then you have the golf course archaeology. Now, these get mixed up, particularly where we are now. People come excited saying we've discovered an Iron Age platform when there must have been a house. And you go and look, and it's a golf tee.
And when you said this ceremonial place, let's not call it a hill fort, let's call it an Iron Age meeting place, where would the people be coming from?
Well, we've not much evidence of being inside, so presumably they're coming from the valley. Or they came over the top. Have you been over the top?
Let's go over the top. It is so windy, but wow, it never fails to impress you looking out over Cheltenham like that.
Whenever I'm fed up, I'll come up here, and Dylan Thomas used to call it airing his devils when he walked. And you can stand here and you look at all the geology, the hills, and you can look at all the archaeology, fieldscapes, houses, no matter how old they are, they're archaeology. And there's no way you can feel fed up. You know, it just raises your spirits, especially when you've got skylarks above you. It's just a magical place.
Just beside the fort is the Cleeve Hill golf course, and we're on the 13th green with a couple of golfers. How's your round going?
Fair to average.
What about you?
Fair to average, yes. And
fair to average?
yeah,
I thought
better than I am.
Gloucestershire golfers, I thought you were better than that.
Well, we're just old men who are just out for a swing.
Old men out for a swing, I like that. Do you think I could just pitch on to your 13th green?
Carry on.
Let's have a go. And
You pick the hardest hole on the course.
could you commentate on my chip onto the green?
I could.
How far are we from the hole then?
Well, about 15 yards, I would say.
15 yards. The green is sloping right to left.
Right to left and downhill.
I've never ever chipped a ball in an Iron Age hill fort meeting place. So here we go.
Well, not bad, not bad.
Entirely the wrong side. It was going right to left,
You
and
did
I've
say it
gone
was
left to right.
Yes, I know.
It is a lovely place to play golf, though, isn't it?
It's not the best course in the world, but it's the best place in the world to play golf, I think, with these views.
Quite a few unusual hazards on this golf course. You've got to watch out for
Sheep.
1,500 sheep.
Something like that. They're only on the common from the end of April to the end of October, so if you want to avoid them, you can do, but you've got to play in the winter when the weather's a bit interesting up here.
Ever had to chip over a sheep?
Yes, quite often. We normally scare them off first to avoid any chance hitting them.
Enjoy your round, gents.
Okay, thank you. Oh, never mind. Bit of a fade, I'm afraid.
Well, walking across Cleeve Common, we've just met Sue and the border terrier, Millie. What's it been like having Cleeve Common on your doorstep?
Amazing.
Especially during lockdown. It must have been so fantastic to be able to get up out on this common free.
We felt spoilt and very, very privileged, because the thing is with Cleeve, even when people were allowed to drive somewhere, there were hundreds of cars parked on the roadside. But when you came up here, you think, well, where are all the people? Because it's such a huge area. People are just spread out, you know, over the miles, the hills, the valleys. You're never crowded, even if it looks like you're crowded in the car park.
And what about you personally? I don't know, especially for your spirit and your mental health, what's it do?
Oh, it's a sense of freedom here. I don't know what it is. You come over Cleeve Hill, and as you go around that corner, everybody says you get that feeling, and it is. You've got all the valleys and the hill, countryside in front of you, and it just feels like you're suddenly let out of a cage. It's just fabulous. Just love it.
Up here on Cleeve Common today, we've certainly seen lots of people enjoying that freedom. Lots of walkers, joggers, people riding horses. And sometimes it is easy to forget that this is a working agricultural environment, because, like the golfers told us, you can see plenty of sheep up here, and there's 1,500 of them dotted among the gorse, chomping away on the grass. Local farmers are able to graze their sheep up here on the common through spring, summer and autumn, and it's a tradition that's been going on since medieval times. Tom Redmond's family keep sheep in the Cotswolds and they hold commoners' rights, and Tom's now in his 90s and his sons have taken over the farm, but he's been sharing some of his memories with us from his farmyard.
The ewes and lambs would make their way to the hill sometime early in May, and plenty of years there would still be snow on the hill at that time. We take them in a trailer now, but the sheep all walked in my time. Some of the farms that were 2.5 miles away from the common, it would be a whole day for 2 or perhaps 3 men to drive approximately 300 sheep and lambs. But of course there were very little traffic on the roads at that time, so it wasn't a tremendous problem. So the sheep stayed there with the lambs up until they were thinking about shearing, approximately the first or the second week in June. They were washed and then they would be taken off for shearing. There was a very, well, it's still there to this day, an excellent washing pool. With several farmers together, we'd say we're going washing today, and we would probably get somewhere in the region of 1,000 sheep there. It was quite a measurable task, but washed wool in those days commanded a very substantial premium. The old farmers used to say that it was the first crop off the farm, and it nearly always paid the rent. The lambs then were a saleable commodity coming the first week in September. And the Westford was one of the main sheep markets at that time. The way that the auctioneer approached the sale was straight off Cleeve, always a beneficial aspect, because it's the health of the place. When you become attached to Cleeve Common, it's a unique place. To me, it's quite a marvellous place.
We've just dropped down the hillside into watery bottom. We heard Kay talking about that earlier on in the programme. And this is the beginning of the stream where Tom washed his sheep. The sheep wash is a bit further down the hill. It is a lovely spot. And we're going to walk down the stream, follow the stream down to the sheep wash, where we're going to meet Giles Alder, who's the conservation officer here on the common. The landscape is completely different down here from up on the top on the common, where it's flat grass. We're now in a little sort of river valley. Precious grassland, isn't it, this? It might look very ordinary, but it's pretty special.
It really is, it really is. So this is what we would call unimproved limestone grassland, which is a really rare habitat these days. It used to be about 40% of the Cotswolds was covered in this kind of habitat. Now it's down to only about 1.5%. So we've lost so much, and Cleeve Common is one of the biggest areas that we have of this habitat.
So what can we find here? Are you going to take us somewhere to see something a little bit more interesting than grass?
Yeah, it's pretty well trampled here, so if we go just over there, we should be able to find some good things.
Let's go.
So we're just looking for any flowers. I can see some here. This is one of the pea family. If you have sweet peas in your garden, you'll notice the flower looks the same sort of shape. So this is bird's foot trefoil.
Bright yellow.
Yeah, really yellow. So we've got rock rose just here. papery little flower.
Look at that beautiful thing, 5 little petals, and almost like a fireworks starburst in the middle.
And walking through here on a warm day, you get all the oils released from the thyme. It smells wonderful as well. Now we could look for, we've got this very special little orchid that grows in these kinds of places. It's greeny yellow, really tiny, really hard to spot.
Don't we have to be careful not to tread on it?
Well, yeah, that would be good.
What are we looking for?
It's
Greeny?
called musk orchid, and it's a really rare plant.
What's this?
Oh, yeah, you found one.
That's it,
excellent.
isn't it?
That's it. So when you think of orchids, you often think bright pink, large-looking plants, but that's...
If anybody looked at that, if you didn't know, it's a spiky little weedy-looking thing.
Yeah.
But that is a very precious flower, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what does it say about this grassland that we've got this growing here?
Well, this grassland is developed over centuries of grazing. The soils are very thin. The nutrient levels are really low. So that means that the really thick grasses can't outcompete and swamp all the wildflowers. That's why there's such a variety and diversity in here.
And you've got the Galloway cattle grazing up here.
That's right.
How does that help this grassland to have those cattle grazing this? Doesn't it damage it?
You have to look at the overall picture. They'll certainly eat some flowers, and the sheep will eat some flowers, but there's not enough of them to eat them all. And if we didn't have the grazing, then we would lose the habitat altogether and the flowers with it.
At one time, this would have been covered in trees. What about that argument? Just let it be now. Rewild it.
Well, I think rewilding is great in certain circumstances, but I don't know, on Cleeve Common there's such a lot here already that if we did just let the management go and not graze it at all, I think we'd stand to lose quite a lot. All this open grassland would scrub over, and we'd lose all these wonderful species that we've just looked at.
It's not just the grass and the flowers we can see, but the insects that this kind of grassland supports. What sort of things are in the grass?
Yeah, all kinds of wonderful things. So you might see these lumps here, which are anthills.
They look a bit like molehills with grass on. Is it possible to see the ants?
Yeah, it should be. So this time of the year they're pretty active. So
there they are, look.
If we just scrape a little, they'll be pretty cross. Come out to defend their nest against us. They're probably, these anthills, 30-40 centimetres high, and they're made by yellow meadow ants. The thing about that is that they change the ecology of the grassland slightly, make it very dry, so you get different species of plants liking those areas, like the wild thyme, for example, particularly likes it on those dry anthills.
Well, we've come to the end of our time up here on Cleeve Common in the Cotswolds in Gloucestershire. And we're going to end the programme at somewhere that everybody calls the Lone Tree. And this is a lone, stumpy little beech tree, blown and battered about by the westerlies that come across and bash into this hill. We've heard about how the hill fort here was probably a place of ceremony for generations past. And we've come to a modern day place of ceremony because there are some seats and a Cotswold stone wall, and this is where people remember their loved ones. There are little silver and bronze plaques screwed into the wall, just remembering people for whom Cleeve Common was a special place. This is David Childs. Cleeve Cloud held a special place in his heart. Here's Elsie Bywater, treasured memories of happy times spent together on this hill. Just being somewhere like this, where so many people have enjoyed the very same view, it's a real privilege to be here.